Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our webinar this morning. This is related to the new higher education strategic plan called 60x30TX, and this webinar is on the completion goal. This is the last in a series of webinars that we have been hosting to try and inform you in the field about the new plan, largely because we have asked for feedback over the last 6 weeks, and the deadline for comments is Friday. So if you have comments, please share them with us. My name is Ginger Gossman, and I am in academic planning and policy. The rest of my colleagues will introduce themselves in a few moments. We're going to start the webinar with an overview video, which lasts about 12 minutes. I just want to let you know that you can hear this audio through your computer, but depending on your Wi-Fi connection, it may break up. So for the clearest audio, please dial in through the phone connection. Also, when we move to the Q&A portion of the webinar, please use your Q&A chat bar. Okay, we'll get started with our overview video.
The Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board is in the process of developing the state's next long-term strategic plan for higher education. The success of achieving the goals of this plan is going to rest heavily on collaboration among higher education, public education, and the workforce. We need to work together much more closely than ever before. The current strategic plan for Texas higher education, Closing the Gaps by 2015, is coming to an end this year. It has been a very successful plan for the past 15 years. Accomplishments during Closing the Gaps up to 2014 include the following. First, over 2.6 million students completed a certificate, associate, or bachelor's. Second, Texas public institutions invested $42.8 billion in research and development, supported by federal, state, local, institutional, and private sources. Third, state legislators allocated $3.3 billion in Texas grants to support low-income students in higher education. Fourth, close to 170,000 students graduated with nursing degrees, and nearly 126,000 students graduated with engineering degrees. These are all graduates contributing to high-demand fields that might not have without the initiatives that came out of Closing the Gaps. Now we are looking forward to the next 15 years as we design a plan that establishes a globally competitive workforce in Texas by 2030. In March 2014, the Coordinating Board created the Higher Education Strategic Planning Committee, which is comprised of education and business leaders from across Texas. This committee is collaborating with Coordinating Board staff on the development of the next higher education plan for the state. Since then, the committee has received expert testimony from individuals from across the state, the U.S., and from around the world. The final plan will be presented to the Coordinating Board on July 23rd for adoption. The new draft plan, 60x30TX, is firmly founded on the critical need that Texas produces an educated workforce that is able to adapt to change and compete at the highest levels, nationally and internationally. The world's most competitive workforces have younger populations with more education compared to the U.S. and compared to Texas. 60x30TX emphasizes all forms of post-high school education, from certificates to associate and bachelor's degrees to graduate and professional education. That also highlights the overarching goal that 60% of Generation Texas will have a post-secondary credential or degree by 2030. 60x30TX will build on the success of Closing the Gaps. We don't expect work that began with Closing the Gaps to end. We expect those accomplishments will continue, and that 60x30TX is the beginning of a new series of accomplishments. We anticipate this pattern of building on successes will be true well into the future. The Strategic Planning Committee has developed 4 student-centered goals. The first deals with educational attainment, which is a fraction of the Texas population actually holding a degree or certificate. The second goal deals with degree and certificate completion at Texas colleges and universities. The third goal highlights the need for students to know they have marketable skills. The fourth goal recognizes the need to address student debt. The first and overarching goal is, by 2030, at least 60% of Texans ages 25 to 34 will have a post-secondary credential or degree. This is a big percentage to shoot for because right now only about 38% of Texans in this age group have any kind of post-high school degree or certificate. The best educated societies in the world have already reached 60% or close to it in this age group. This includes our northern neighbor and international competitor, Canada. We need to move the level of attainment up dramatically among young Texans. The new plan calls for realistic interim targets and strategies that will get us to our final goal if we stay on course through 2030. Critical to achievement is the focus on and success in improving the education level of young Hispanic Texans, who will make up a majority of the students in school between now and 2030. Why is the 60 by 30 goal important? There has been a huge increase in the percentage of jobs that require some form of post-secondary education or training. In 1973, only 28% of all jobs required education beyond a high school diploma. According to the Center on Education and the Workforce at Georgetown University, 65% of all jobs will require post-secondary education by 2018, including 59% of all jobs in Texas. The simple truth is that the 21st century workforce will require more education and more skills, not less, and the competition globally will be tough. These projections are a key reason why the Coordinating Board is pursuing funding for strategies and other higher education initiatives designed to better align higher education with the workforce and boost the production of post-secondary educated workers. The next goal reads, by 2030, at least 550,000 students in that year will complete a certificate, associate, bachelor's, or master's from a Texas public, independent, or for-profit college or university. Data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics make clear that students don't get much of an economic lift from college attendance unless they complete a degree or certificate. We can do better at this than we're doing now. Under closing gaps, Texas has been able to generate impressive growth in degree and certificate production. We need to continue that record. The plan includes targets for Hispanic Texans earning 285,000 certificates or degrees in 2030. The plan includes other specific targets, and we encourage everyone to read through these carefully. Another important target is to increase the percentage of students who enroll in higher education directly after high school from the current 53% to 65%. The third goal reads, by 2030, all graduates from Texas public institutions of higher education will have completed programs with identified marketable skills. The goal calls for every institution in Texas to articulate how it prepares its students to succeed after completion. All programs develop skills of value in the marketplace. The plan requires institutions to formally identify those skills for each of its programs so that students are aware of and can communicate these skills to employers. The fourth goal is, by 2030, undergraduate student loan debt will not exceed 60% of first-year wage for graduates of Texas public institutions. We have an opportunity to balance student loan debt and improve how higher education is finance to reduce financial barriers that students and families encounter when pursuing any level of higher education. We think the best way to focus on financial issues is to set the goal of maintaining debt load as measured against student earning power at graduation. Success will require collaboration among elected officials and higher education leaders, and will probably require imaginative reinvention of paths for students and methods for teaching and learning. The 60x30 text plan must be bold. If we aren't bold, we will lose ground in having an educated population. If we lose ground, we will lose our competitive edge in the global marketplace. This will affect institutions and their students. Great universities are built by great economies. If we aren't bold, projected personal income will not keep pace with inflation or the cost of living. The 60x30 text plan is bold. It rests on careful assessments of the possible. We have set challenging goals and targets to meet the genuine needs of Texas and Texans by 2030. We need everyone to review the plan and provide comment before it is sent to the coordinating board for approval. We have an online tool for stakeholders called College Town Hall Texas that enables you to participate in the discussion. This interactive website is hosted by the coordinating board and provides an opportunity to share ideas, respond to new initiatives, and join the dialogue on the future of higher education in the state. Stakeholders, including you, legislators, business leaders, faculty, administrators, students, parents, and educators can help shape future policy as Texas works to become a national and international leader in higher education. Question and answer session will begin shortly. Thank you.
That was the overview video. At this point, what we're going to do is introduce ourselves, and then we'll launch into a brief PowerPoint that's specifically on the completion goal. So once again, my name is Ginger Gossman, and I am a Senior Director in Academic Policy and Planning.
Good morning. This is Julie Eklund. I am Deputy Assistant Commissioner in the Strategic Planning and Funding Division.
Paul Turk, Strategic Planning and Funding. Gardner, Deputy Commissioner for Academic Planning and Policy.
Jason Brown, Strategic Planning and Funding. Kramer, College Readiness and Success.
Red Eagles, Academic Quality and Workforce. DeRoder, College Readiness and Success.
I'm going to hand it over to Julie Eklund for the PowerPoint on the completion goal.
Thank you. We are going to walk through the completion goal. First, take a look at the goal itself, then talk a little bit about the targets that fall under the goal, and then we're going to talk about the strategies also that fall under the completion goal. Feel free to send in questions as I am presenting, and we will either address them as they arise or at the completion of the presentation, depending on the question. So, go to the next slide. Okay, as you heard in the initial PowerPoint, our completion goal is that by 2030, at least 550,000 students in that year, and that's very important to remember, it's not cumulative. In that year, they will complete a certificate, associate, bachelor's, or master's from a Texas higher education institution. So you'll note this is different than the success goal under Closing the Gaps because the completion goal does include master's degrees as well as undergraduate degrees. Our slide provides a little bit of background about the math that was done because to determine an appropriate goal that will get to, or that will, we hope, be able to contribute to the 60 by 30 goal, which we had a webinar about yesterday, and the 60 by 30 goal is that 60% of young adult Texans will have a degree or certificate by 2030. These goals are related. We looked in the past to see what the patterns were like for completion and how that contributed to attainment in the state of Texas, and we used that information to make projections forward. There are some differences, though, that I want to talk about now between the completion goal and the 60 by 30 sort of overarching goal that we have. For the completion goal, as we said, it is not cumulative. We will be measuring completion in every year, and those will be students in Texas who complete, as reported to us on our graduate report. The completion goal includes students who have completed a Cert 1, a Cert 2, an associate, a bachelor's, or a master's degree, and it'll include completions for individuals at all age groups, whereas our attainment goal, our 60 by 30 goal, just looks at Texans who are 25 to 34. As I said, it includes master's degrees, which we have not done in the past. Our baseline for 2014 was 291,000 completions, and we hope over time, and if we can flip a slide, and I'm not sure it's there, but we hope that by 2020, we'll be able to achieve 138,000 completions. By 2025, 198,000, and by 2030, 200. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong. I'm looking at the wrong one. Okay, I apologize. By 2020, 376,000 completions. By 2025, 455,000 completions, and by 2030, 550,000 completions. So those are our interim targets to reach our completion goal. And count all degrees that are reported to us again each year, so that in 2030 we will hopefully reach our 550,000. And this is a goal that we will evaluate every 5 years to see, because obviously we base our relationship between the completion goal and the attainment goal on past history and what that looked like in terms of young adult completion and overall completions. And we're going to take a careful look, as we will with all of the goals and targets in the plan, to make sure that our projections and our data have provided us a good background for where we need to be, and we will readjust it at those in time if needed, if the population projections change, those types of things. So we're going to look now in a little more depth at our specific targets and some of the past data that we used to develop these targets and the interim targets that work towards the goal. We looked at that I mentioned talked about the targets for overall completion. This slide that you're seeing is related to the target for Hispanic completion, and these are actually the interim targets that I started reading in error. But for these, we're looking at 138,000 Hispanic completions in 2020, 198 in 2025, and 285,000 in 2030. This is an ambitious target, but one that's going to be very important for Texas. And as you can see from the past data that is shown on this slide, Texas made tremendous progress with Hispanic completions from 2000 to 2014, but we still have a long way to go. And what these slides will show, as you look at them, the graphics will show, is the top solid orange line is where we would be if the 5 best years that we had, and in this case, in terms of Hispanic completion, if that continued. The dotted orange line would be if the 5 worst years that we had over the last 15 continued. And as you can see, for this particular target, we need to be right in the middle there. So we hope that we will continue to have strong growth for completion moving forward. The next target that we have is to complete for African American students. And as you can see, we've also done very well in terms of African American completion under our Closing the Gaps plan, but we need to continue that growth. And one thing that is very important is that growth continue and that we do better for our African American male students, where our completions have not been as high as for our African American female students. Which brings us to the next target, which relates to completions for male students overall for groups, because we see from our past data, and we've seen in past history, our completions for male students have slowed, not as strong as they were in 2000, and we think it's very important to focus attention on this population so that moving forward we can increase results. This is going to be very important if we are going to be able to reach our overall 60 by 30 goal to have strong participation and completion on the students as well as female students. Okay, and last target that I'm going to show you has to do with, the second to last target I'm going to show you, this is the last one that has to do with demographic breakouts. This has to do with economically disadvantaged students. This is a group, if you look at our K through 12 data and the percent of our K-12 students who are economically disadvantaged, the numbers are growing, unfortunately, and it's going to be very important for Texas that we are able to enroll and graduate economically disadvantaged students at rates that are equal to our overall rates, and that's basically what this target aims to do, to focus attention on the participation and completion, of course, economically disadvantaged students. Basically, we want the same percent of students who are economically disadvantaged to be able to complete and graduate. So here's the data related to that population, and then finally, we have a target that relates to the percent of high school graduates who enroll directly in Texas higher education, and that will include public, private, and for-profit colleges and universities. Right now, our 2014 graduate data has just recently been posted, and we are at 54.2% of our high school graduates who enroll directly in higher education, and that's up about half a percentage point from last year, which is encouraging, but we need to do better. So this target is that we will have 58% by 20 of those regional graduates enrolling in higher ed. By 2025 to have 61%, and then to reach 65% by 2030. Recognize that there are students who enroll out-of-state, and we have looked at some past data, and we understand that between probably 8 and 10% of our students do enroll out-of-state, but that 65% goal right now is for students who stay within Texas, those students that we're able to track. So those are the completion targets. We have some slides that are related to, and are there any questions here? It looks like we might have some. The question is, why not include PhDs? Well, PhDs are included, as I said before, in our 60 by 30 goal for young adults. So to look at overall attainment, but in terms of completion, we are focusing in areas where we feel like it's important that we have additional growth, and Texas actually has done very well in terms of the growth in students completing doctoral degrees and professional degrees, which also are not included in completion. But there is a need for growth, for more growth in terms of our undergraduate degrees and in the master's level. And as I said before, under Closing the Gaps, we only included those undergraduate, bachelor's, associates, and certificates, but we have added masters for completion here. The next question is, will institutions be able to set their own targets for this goal like we did with Closing the Gaps? We have final determinations yet about exactly what particular targets and goals institutions will be setting related to the completion goal. It is likely that institutions will be involved in some kind of target setting. We don't believe that will necessarily be for all of the different demographic breakouts that we talked about. We certainly will be showing information related to all of the targets by institution in accountability system, and I think many of you are probably aware that we will be redesigning the accountability system to include metrics related to our new 60 by 30 text plan beginning in 2016. We will certainly have we'll be looking for feedback from institutions regarding exactly how we will develop those institutional goals and targets moving forward. Okay. So and then we'll talk a little bit now about the strategies that are affiliated with the completion goal. And I'm just going to talk very broadly about them, and we do have staff here from our college readiness and success area who will be available to answer questions about these if I'm unable to help with them. So basically, just to speak broadly, the way that the completion strategies have been organized, it's basically set up under three broad governing strategies, and then we have strategy examples under each of those three. So I'll talk you to the three, and I want to talk a little bit about how these strategies were organized. The first one is focused on access in terms of students from K-12 and overall generally students accessing higher education. Second has to do with preparation and academic readiness, as well as the academic aspects of students moving through higher education. So there's an academic focus to that in terms of students being more prepared and also getting the academic support that they need. And the final one has to do with when students are enrolled in higher education, making sure those students are guided in a way that helps them to build credentials. It has to do with course delivery, that type of thing. There's a lot of overlap in these three strategies. For example, credit is absolutely a strategy that can be related to helping students access higher education, but it's also related to the academic preparation that students have if they're prepared for the dual credit, and then taking dual credit can also, help them to be more academically prepared when they do enroll in higher ed because they've taken college courses and had exposure to that college content. As I said, the first one had to do with access. The second, and I'm kind of trying to go along with the slides here, the second has to do with academics, and the third one has to do with structuring programs to be responsive to change, and it's related to, again, innovative approaches to content delivery, using predictive analytics, really understanding the success of students through higher education. So any questions about any of the strategies that we've shared with you? Okay, so we have another question here that goes back to the targets. Are there targets for different types of degrees, like there were in Closing the Gap? There are not targets for different types of degrees, but doesn't mean that that's not information that we will be looking at moving forward. As you know, under Closing the Gaps, we did look at specific bachelor degree completion, associate degree completion. We will be breaking out these targets in different types of ways to get a better understanding of who's completing, but this is not as specific. As you'll also notice, we don't have specific targets for specific critical fields, but as we move forward, we will certainly be highlighting information about different critical fields as we feel it's important.
Actually, we have a specific strategy. Yeah. Under the first goal that says it will work for the Texas Workforce Commission to identify critical as they move forward. But unlike Closing the Gaps, where we identified a smaller critical fields that carried on throughout the plan, we're going to identify these as we go forward, knowing there's some shift. There's a lot of talk about why we don't have STEM fields. Well, to begin with, we don't have a shortage of biological sciences, and we really have. There's some debate nationally about whether there is, in fact, a shortage in some of the STEM fields. There still is, but it's very specific, and in working with the Workforce Commission, I anticipate that what we'll be doing is having fields be more targeted and provide this information to the institutions and also accurate and review the proposals.
Well, so far there are not any other questions being posted. We are here and we are happy to respond. If you want to share a comment or a question, we're certainly open to that. Also want to be respectful of your time, and if there aren't any additional questions, we can conclude this webinar. We'll just type for a moment here.
Question come in, will there be focus on specific target populations, for example, foster students, veterans, etc.?
Well, we have targets in the sense you're asking about them, but we, as you know, break down various populations in areas, and we will monitor them. We've recently begun to use about foster children. We've recently provided data to the group that really encourage foster children beyond high school, a group of judges. I forgot the name of the group is, but these veterans, of course, have always been embraced in Texas. We're aware of their participation, but we will not have targets in particular for these groups. As with closing the gaps, if we find that there's a problem in some areas we go forward, we might recommend adding a target if we think there's some value in terms of focusing on them in particular.
Okay. We have a question. Explain what innovative approaches to content delivery means in this strategy.
Kramer, I think there are ways that one can think about this, and we've left this strategy example broad so as to accommodate multiple types of content delivery. And this might include something like a compressed or accelerated pathway to a credential. It might include a competency-based education that includes, say, assessment that would accelerate students through a pathway, high types of content delivery, so as to different types of delivery systems and methods so as to ultimately reduce the cost to the student, to speed, and improve completion rates.
And Ginger, I just wanted to add that this will also include content delivery methods that we don't yet know about.
Right,
so
yes.
We want to keep it open for anything inventive that you might experiment with in the field. So we are wide open.
Yeah, this is David. I'm glad Ginger said that. I wanted to say something similar to what she said, but in the sense is I think we're at sort of a critical juncture right now. People have talked about innovations. Some people think that higher education will look very different in 10 years. We don't. We think it's inappropriate to assume that one approach versus another is the best at the time. We encourage some different approaches. Notice and other we actually encourage experimentation. And with things, if it's worthwhile, we would consider to the board the listening of some rules in cases, if it were some type of experimentation that we think would benefit students in learning. But know what those might be, and we think people in the field are the best ones to make that determination.
Okay. The next question. With the emphasis on Hispanic completions, is there a specific geographic focus for the board, i.e. the Rio Grande Valley? It's really this is a statewide completion goal, and this is a good opportunity to add that with closing gaps, institutions will really be able to think about the ways that it best works for them to encourage completions and for the target groups. So certainly, we will be showing institutional data, we'll be providing regional data. It's going to be up to institutions to think about what works best in their areas and with their particular population.
In regard to Hispanic students, it would be a serious mistake, I believe, for the state to focus on one part of the state in terms of Hispanic participation and completion. Hispanics are a critical population to the state. They're important in every region of the state, some more than others. People were surprised decades ago at the impact and important Hispanics in the Gulf Coast region, the Houston area, which had many more Hispanics than people thought at the time. So Hispanics are critical everywhere in the state. They're important to our successes as a state. So while the Valley is obviously important, the best success in the Valley is not enough for success statewide.
We were working on the almanac, and I was surprised by the number of Hispanic serving institutions. Every year we do the almanac, that number grows, and there are very, very many in the state.
Education will fail if institutions are getting very large numbers of Hispanic students and helping them graduate and participate in this economy.
Okay, the next question. You mentioned a goal specific to Hispanic students. Are goals for other underrepresented groups based on ethnicity? Yeah, I think maybe Ginger put that target up. We also have a target for African American students that are part of the completion goal. I spoke to that earlier.
And I think it's important that we specifically in this plan talk about economically disadvantaged students as well. We know from our data that higher education through completion is the lowest of any for economically disadvantaged. So we have a specific focus on that group, which cuts across ethnicity.
Okay, next question. From a view, how do these goals translate into capital facility priorities and funding?
Okay, this is, if you look at our student goal, we specifically have a strategy to look at bring together a group, and we've talked about including some other states to see if there's some more comprehensive way of funding higher education. Apparently, there are separate pots, and this is characteristic of different states. So there's a pot for poor students. There's a formula funding. If fortunate, there's something for capital funding. This is not unique to Texas. So the hope is to bring together a group where we're not convinced we'll have a final solution, but something that takes all of these into account, which all contribute to student debt. But we need to look at that comprehensively. I've always been told Texas was the originator of formula funding. Texas will look at the next approach that will last another 50 years, or find some ways to look at these together rather than as separate and competing elements for funding.
In terms of the part of that question related to facilities, I know we've been asked in the past about capacity issues. I don't know if that's something you would like to ask. And certainly we talked earlier about innovative content delivery and some of the different kinds of things that are happening online education, those kinds of things related to ensure that we have lots of available opportunities for students to participate, even if it's not in brick-and-mortar buildings.
Well, generally speaking, in the past, I think it's still true, that order for classes, and I'm under classes is not our major issue if they used more hours a week. Certainly is who's going to teach the classes. And we've felt that for quite a while. Lab facilities, other types of things are different. As you said, these things are all going to be looked at together. But 20 years ago, we had a staff member do some analysis and said at that time, it wouldn't be in the same way now. If all universities use their facilities to the same extent UT San Antonio did at that time, we would not have to build any more classrooms. Again, I'm talking classrooms.
Thank you. Okay. Question. I'm going to let Ginger tackle this one, but I'll read it. Is there a grid matrix that is available that shows the goals, strategies, and initiatives mapped? I'm interested in crosswalking the success momentum and our college strategic plan to the state plan. So again, is there a simple grid or matrix that is accessible?
That's a really good question. We have prepared materials like a matrix for our Higher Education Strategic Planning Committee, but we haven't shared them publicly. But we do have a website that's focused on sharing materials that's shown in the webinar, so we can post that there. And what it will be two Excel files. One of them will show the goals and targets. There'll be a long version, which has every single word in every single cell, and then there'll be a short version that's a summary, just for reference. And then there'll be a separate Excel document that is for the strategies that is formatted the same way. One tab has the version and one tab is a summary. So we'll be happy to post that for you.
Yeah, I felt like this, but you talk with our staff. I think that's an interesting idea. I need to write down now. If you would like to contact one of our staff and talk about what you have in mind, and maybe as you develop something, it would be something that could be shared with other institutions. It sounds like it's an idea and something that develops something helpful for other people if you share with us your specific suggestions.
Yeah, what I'll do, for those who signed up and identified yourselves, I have all of your email addresses, and once all of the materials are posted online, I'm going to send everyone the links, and including those Excel files that I just described. And I'd really love to hear from you to know whether or not those files meet needs. And as Dr. Gard is saying, if it does, let's talk about how we can reformat, recreate, or redesign that to get what you need.
Okay, next question. Feel about the House and passing HB1 for TRBs this session?
Positive meaning 100% sure no. but our view at this point is TRBs will pass. We don't know in which one the sides. There's millions of dollars difference, but either way, institutions will be in a better position, and so we're hopeful.
Okay, another minute. If there are any more questions, we'd be happy to address them. I want to mention, if anyone would like to get into the real details in terms of the targets and the metrics, I know we have some institutional research folks listening, Paul Trott and I would be happy to sit down with you and to provide resources. This is Julie Eklund. If you would like additional information about how that work was done and how the targets and goal were developed. So do feel free to contact us if you would like additional detail there.
Well, thank you for tuning in. We don't see any more questions coming through. We very much appreciate your time, and we hope that you found this webinar useful. We always find your questions illuminating for us on our end. Again, the ending period for the comments is this Friday, close of business. This is Ginger Gossman, and you can send your comments to me, ginger.gossman@thhecb.tx.us. If you for that. So again, we appreciate your time, and you're welcome to contact any of us offline if you need more information. Thank you, and have a great Wednesday.